Hey, so as promised, let's continue with some final drive assembly. So, yeah, I've got way too many gaskets hanging on that back end. Let's start using them. Yeah, so as promised, first thing we're going to do is get the bowl gear and the cover and the shaft and everything placed onto each housing. We have the pinion loaded in there already, so placing this cover with that bearing, we'll cage that the rest of the way in. We'll do it to the right side. We'll do it to the left side. Yeah, like I said, well, in the members video, we popped some of these gaskets out. I explained how I have to make my kind of puzzle piece like joints in each one. So, we're going to have to back that up with some sealer for sure. And that's probably just a good idea here anyway, because you don't want any kind of seeps. It's so much work to get back into these. You definitely want to get everything done right the first time. There's the other set, so you don't have to go back in. Let's get busy. So before we start putting the gaskets on and getting all those full of the stickum goo and all that good stuff, we're just going to go and pre-lube the pinion gear, the bowl gear. You can see I've already been around the bowl gear all the way, got all the teeth, been in the bearing. So we're just putting the good stuff on everything here because you don't want those to start up dry. And so, all right, so really not trying to be a smart aleck here or anything. I've had the question come up several times from several different people in the comment section. What are you going to run for oil? What are you going to run for gear lube? What are you going to, and that's just a topic that I refuse to even get into because people just get too crazy about it. I mean, I've been through it on the forums. I've watched other people talk. It starts out innocent enough. And somebody will say, I like this. And then somebody says, you are wrong. You're going to ruin everything. You need to run this. And then they start arguing and a third person jumps in and a fourth person jumps in and everybody's running different stuff. Everybody has the only one good, right, correct grade, and everybody else's stuff is going to ruin everything out there. And it's just not worth it because, I had an old timer tell me, and this is true, that the oils they used in these things back in the day that were premium would not pass as bar and chain oil in our modern world. And that's largely true. So I know oils have undergone a lot of changes in the last few years, especially with low sulfur and all this other stuff and CJ4. And we're not getting into any of that. So not to be a smart aleck, it's a topic I'm not going to wade into. We'd be much safer discussing politics, religion, or what have you. So, and we don't discuss those here either. Fact of the matter is, more engines, more transmissions, more gear trains have been destroyed by too dirty of oil or not enough oil than have ever been hurt by the quote-unquote wrong oil. So if you change your oil and you keep everything clean and it has oil in it, I pretty much don't care what you run. We're probably going to get along just fine. Okay, the one thing I will say is, at least in these old cats, you get into these heavy-duty gear trains, these bowl gears, the transmissions, things like that. Do some research. Choose what grade of gear lube you think is going to be adequate, and then go a little thicker. That's what I do. Okay, gasket's in place, sealer has been applied, so we can put it together. And I'm just doing the final tightening of all the bolts, 16 all the way around between the back side and the front. This early tractor is all bolts. Later tractors, many of these on the backside will be studs with nuts. That's just a first generation, second generation kind of difference thing. Okay, so I've installed the bearing, the washer, the nut. I assumed you all had seen enough of that in the last episode that we didn't need to go through it again. You should be pretty well versed on how all that goes together. So as far as preload on the shaft, so the book just states to tighten the nut until all end play is removed from the shaft. So we do have a new bearing and race out there. This one was still like new in here, so we have a used one in here. I preload these a little bit. I don't just leave them like no preload. So, you know, I've set preload on a lot of things. I don't need to measure this to be able to feel that, you know, we've got probably a good, I'd say 15 inch-pounds on there. So we're calling that good right where it's at. Turn this back up to where, there we go. We can take the cotter pin, slide that through, lock that down, make it permanent. So I'll finish folding this and then we'll carry out all these same steps over on the left side. All right, left side now, and just like before, we've got the slick where it needs to be and we've got the stick where it needs to be. So let's put it together. Okay, I know we ran through this second one pretty quick, but you guys should be pretty well up on the process by now. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is get those seal retainers thrown in each one of these finals. So we can take a couple more gaskets off the back end. Got the retainers over here. There we go, there we go. So you can see I've got the old seal pulled out of each one and we've got new ones in there. So quick rundown on that. This is the old 4B4967. You can see it's a kind of a dual seal. We have a leather lip here on the inside and then on the outside like a heavy felt ring to catch the dust. So yeah, we didn't go with that, but it crosses over to the SKF 29952 as usual. Complete specs on that in case you are interested. So yeah, because this old one was so heavy duty and so thick, again, I just doubled up. We got the tube of grease out. I did the old pack and stack, two in there on top of each other, and they stand up about a 1/16 proud above the top of the retainer housing surface, but that doesn't make any difference at all. It doesn't interfere with anything. So yeah, we could get by with probably a single modern lip seal in each one of those, but hey, the finals are off right now. Might as well do it all up, right? Okay, so these seal retainers actually have more going on than what you would think. Let's get something to sit on here, shall we? All right, so not only do they provide you a means of putting an oil seal in there, but well, we've got this little groove here and we've got this little kind of channel on the bottom. To explain those quickly, you'll remember how I mentioned the bull gears are flinging oil around in here all the time, and a certain amount is going to migrate through that intermediate bearing into this upper compartment where the pinion shaft is. So over time, the oil level builds up in this compartment until it gets up to the bearing right here, and the bearing, as the rollers are going around, will pick that oil up, circulate it throughout itself, and the stuff that spills out will go into this channel in the bottom right here. That channel directs it to this passage, and it goes through that passage and returns down to the lower compartment. So the bull gears are actually like a rudimentary oil pump in here, between that trough that carries oil into this inner bearing and then circulating it into this upper compartment and through that bearing, which is also a self-regulating oil level system. it's just the people that designed this back in the day were really quite clever, because everything in these era of Caterpillars serves a purpose, and it's just so stupid simple, but it's amazingly effective anyway. So, and then this little kind of groove that's cut in here goes toward the top, and what that is like a vent passage. So as these finals heat up, any kind of pressure that may build is going to be exhausted up that channel right there and just kind of vent it out into the clutch compartment. The clutch compartment is not airtight. Sometimes you run the plugs out. Sometimes there's not great gaskets under the inspection covers. So it gets rid of all its pressure that way. But like I said, more than just a seal retainer. All right, so next I'm going to start working on the brake actuation components. So not really much to talk about here. I did have the actuator, what do you want to call these, shafts and the pivot apart, and cleaned them up, greased both of those. That's pretty simple. This little pinch bolt holds the lever on, and then everything just slides out and you put it together in reverse order disassembly, right? So these are kind of a pain because the gaskets have to go in underneath these housings, and the housings have to stay loose on the finals if you're going to access this bolt right here. So I just have these little temporary 3/8 bolts and nuts. There you go, top one, through, you know, the gaskets, just to hold them in place on those brackets so they're not sliding all over the place, getting in the way. Keeps me from damaging them, so that's why that is the way it is. So to begin putting these together, I'll take the actuator, or well, no, this is the pivot. I'll call this the pivot. All right, we're really organized right now. We'll set that in there like that. Now we'll call this the actuator, right? So I'll join the bell crank on the bottom to the snout of the pivot. Join them with this pin. And now I'll start the shaft in from the outside here. We'll run it in just until it reaches where the actuator is going to have to be in here. Okay. Let's see if I can keep this whole assembly under control and position. Oh, I'm already bumping the camera. Look at that. Positioned well enough to... There, that lower piece wants to settle out right about there. Start the shaft through the actuator. There we go. Just like that. Still can't believe these pivot shafts came out. That never happens. All right. And now I'll lock the shaft in place with this flat piece of metal and the bolt. Boy, it's a good thing I have an editor, isn't it? Well, come on, dude. The heck here? Not cool. Oh, it's too high. You know, there we are. Oh, look at, yeah, I'm a mechanic after all. Look at that. All right, so with all that in place, I should just let you guys know, I've been carrying all those same steps out on the other final. So, you know, I don't think we need to watch all that happen twice. So just so you guys know what's been happening. Anyway, bench is starting to open up a little bit. So next, well, we'll take this spring and we'll start doing brake bands. So let's see if I can do this without completely blocking you guys out. So spring goes on the pull rod first. We'll kick that up out of the way. Now we'll compress the band a little bit, just enough to work it in. There we go. Rotate around, start the pull rod in the upper portion, like that. Now we take the pin that goes in down here, so we'll have to manipulate this a little bit here first. There we are. Pin goes in. And with cotter pins securing that on both ends, we can take the adjuster nut with the points facing down, and we'll just start that onto the pull rod. And we don't need to worry about adjustment or taking that thing all the way quite yet, because we need to have drums in this thing and pretty much have finals on with pedals on and everything to set these adjustments anyway. So I'll just run this thing on about that far. That's all we need to go just to hold it all together. Okay, so final piece that has anything to do with the brake bands is this. It's like a set bolt with a jam nut. You can see I got some grease on there. So I've been tossing around how to show this, and it's just going to be so difficult. I'm just going to reach under here. It goes in a hole on the bottom of the case just ahead of where the sprocket shaft is right here. And it threads up, and what it does is it actually pushes on the brake band from the bottom and like centers it around the drum so that we're not hanging on the drum and wearing too heavily on the top side. So that's another adjustment that's going to have to be performed after this is all together, but we need to get this piece in. So I'm just going to reach under here. We'll work by braille. I'll find where the bolt hole is. Okay, I think I got it. Yep, we're threading in. So just watch for the brake band to start moving. That's when the end of the bolt is going to come up and hit it. See that? The band is moving. We're pushing it up. So that's what that bolt does. So I'm just going to run this down just so it sits back down in the bottom of the housing again. All right, and we'll do the final setting on that, like I said, after everything's all put back together. And now just to close things off a little bit, I'll put the cover over the brake adjustment access hole. So you can see I put some pretty heavy rubberized cork under these because there's such a rough surface that it has to conform to. That just seems to work best. And we're not trying to seal anything in, we're just keeping dirt and moisture out. So the cork does a pretty good job at that. All right guys, the bench is opening up fast now, so drums, that is the next thing. So, all right. First, we need to test old Squatch's eyeball, because you remember I assembled these steering clutch packs outside of the drum. You're supposed to assemble them in the drum engaged with those splines to make sure everything lines up, and I just did it by eye. So let's test old Squatch's eyeball, shall we? Perfect. Look at that. Wanted to make sure that I had all those things stacked up in a straight line first. So once again, the tapered splines clean and dry on the shaft and on the drum. Start that in the band. Engage it with the splines on the shaft. There. Now we're going to need to press this on. And you remember we have the 15-ton recommended press fit in the manual, and it's the same as when we did the steering clutches. If you go to that 15 tons, it likes to split the drum. These both released at 7 tons, so 7 is what we were pressing them back onto. All right, same pressing adapter as we used with the steering clutches over there. It's about 6, 7. And 7. All right, so to finish up the drums, we have the bolt with the heavy washer and a lock washer. Later tractors had a fold over lock under this bolt, and earlier ones like this just had the lock washer. So we're staying true to design. We have these little cork rubber discs. So these go under the bolt and they seal those splines for any oil that may want to migrate up through there. So put the seal on there, holds itself right in place. Put the bolt in and tighten it down. Of course, I need to start the bolt first. Look at, okay, yep. I'm a mechanic after all. I can start a bolt. All right, so after we finished there, we did the same thing to the left side final, and I tell you what, we went high class. We corked the threaded puller holes in each drum again. That's the way we found them. The threads were very well preserved, so we did it upright the second time. Tell you what, look at this. You can see the top of this bench again. So this plug, come on, this plug, new gaskets on each one. Finishing touches here. They will seal the oil fill holes. That one in place. We'll just throw that one where it needs to be. And I'll tell you what, I think we've got an episode. So I hate to cut and run on you all here. I have to call it. I'm out of time in the shop for tonight. And well, we'll address bellows seals, dust guards, and sprockets in the next episode. We get sprockets and seals on those finals, they're done. We're 90% of the way, probably 95% done with those things right now anyhow. And really happy with how these finals turned out. I think they're probably the best finals I've ever put together for a D2. But then again, it matters a lot that you start with something that's already good. So when you start with a good foundation, the rest of it usually follows, and it's a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable. So, okay, that is, well, yeah, what are we, episode 31 here? And I tell you what, we get those sprockets on, we're moving on to undercarriage next. I do have some starting engine news. Most of it's not good. I think I'm going to wait until I get everything back from the shop, which should be very soon now. We've been in communication, and we'll cover it all then. So, not trying to tease you guys, but, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, right? So, all right, everybody, thanks for watching. Please tune in again.